Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the best AD carries in my opinion for patch 5.15. And there hasn't been too much of a change to AD carries since the last time I did a best AD carry video. There's been a few nerfs, like Kalista got nerfed, which is made her a little bit worse, and the meta's kind of shifting away from the tank meta now. We aren't seeing like the Sejuani and the Gragas's, so that's making some of the other burstier AD carries stronger now, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So first up on my list, I have Corki. Corki's got one of the strongest mid-game power spikes for any AD carry in the game, and once you do pick up that Trinity Force on Corki, you can pretty much like duel any other AD carry in the game, as long as you can land your Frost Bomb and you can hit your rockets. He's got great poke as well with his ultimate, and if you do get ahead with him, you can just look to siege down towers, look to poke with his ultimate, and then if you have someone in your team as well, like a Nidalee or a Xerath, then the poke that you have is just really good. He's also got the long range gap closer on his W, which just makes him a really safe pick. And he's also, like I said, very bursty. He's got that armor shred on his E as well, which is really nice. And he also does do a little bit of true damage with his passive. A few cons to Corki though is that he does fall off late game compared to some of the other AD carries like Jinx and Vayne are very strong hyperscaling AD carries, as well as Tristana. And if you come late game, if Corki tries to duel one of those champions, he's probably going to end up losing, and he's just going to have less damage in team fights if it does get to late game and he's playing against one of those other AD carries. And he is also pretty skill shot reliant with his Q and with his ultimate. Next up, I have Ashe. So Ashe is definitely one of my personal favorite AD carries this season. I think I've got over like a 70% win rate with Ashe, and that's mainly because she's just got such a strong late game. She's a really good kiting champion, and one ultimate can just change the game when you're playing with Ashe, and that's really why I like to play her so much. So if you're playing as Ashe and like you start team fighting and you find the AD carry like caught out of position, you can just use your ultimate. If your team follows up, then you're pretty much guaranteed the kill on that AD carry. And then you can just transition that into like getting towers and even getting Baron if it's late game. So I just like that Ashe has that game-changing element to her kit. She's also a tank shredder because of her Q. She's also got lots of CC with her passive, her W, and her ultimate. And she's got the vision with her E as well, which is just really nice for spotting out the enemy jungler and keeping you safe in the laning phase. She's also got a very strong level 6 all-in, and I usually, if I can, like to pair Ashe with Nautilus, because that level 6 all-in you have with strong CC supports is just really good, because you got all the CC from Ashe, you've got the CC from your support, and it's pretty much guaranteed a kill if you do get to level 6 and you go for that all-in. And she's also pretty long ranged as well compared to some of the other AD carries like Vayne and Sivir. One con to Ashe is that she does not have a gap closer, so if you aren't very confident in your positioning as an AD carry, then Ashe may not be the best choice for you. Next up, I have Jinx. So Jinx is one of the strongest hyperscaling AD carries in the game. Once you get to late game as Jinx, your rockets AoE crits are just so strong in team fights, and they can just single-handedly win you games. She's also pretty strong like at all stages of the game. She's strong in the early game in my opinion, because she's got that long range with her rockets, and she can just poke the lower ranged AD carries down in the laning phase. And she also does have a pretty strong mid-game power spike because she can get those AoE crits. She's got pretty good CC as well with her W and her E, and her ultimate is really strong for just finishing off that low health target. She's also a very strong tower pusher with the passive on her Q. It just enables her to push down towers really fast. She's got great cleanup potential with her passive as well. If you can just get that one assist or kill in a team fight as Jinx, then you can just go off and just end up cleaning up team fights. She's also pretty long range with her fish bones, or with her rockets, whatever you want to call them. And two cons to Jinx is that she does not have a gap closer. So like Ashe, if you aren't confident in your positioning as an AD carry, then Jinx may not be the best choice for you. And she is also semi-skill shot reliant with her W as well as her ultimate. So the runner-up for this patch is going to be Vayne. Vayne, in my opinion, if you know how to play her correctly, she can just absolutely carry insanely hard, and come late game team fights, you can just single-handedly win games by having a Vayne on your team. So I think she's a great pick, but only if you know how to play her correctly, and that's why she's like not number 1 on my list, because I do think, like, in my opinion, I think she's harder to play than some of the other AD carries in the game. A lot of people will disagree with me on that one, but I think that it does take a while to get used to Vayne's mechanics and to get her down correctly. It probably took me like over 50 games to feel confident on Vayne, so that's just my take on her. I think that you do need to play her quite a bit to get good on her, but a good Vayne can carry a game insanely hard. She's got the gap closer on her Q, which is really nice as well for just staying mobile. And she's a very, very strong 1v1 champion, especially if you can land that condemn into a wall. She's got true damage, which makes her just an insanely strong pick come late game and against tanky team comps. And she also does have the stealth with her ultimate, which just makes her really hard to catch out in team fights as well. Two cons to Vayne is that she is shorter range compared to some of the other AD carries like Ashe and Jinx, and she is harder to play in my opinion. So last but not least, on the top 5 for this patch is Sivir. Sivir is just a very versatile AD carry, and that's really why I like her. I feel confident to basically pick her into any matchup in the laning phase, and I know that even if I don't have the strongest laning phase as Sivir, due to the utility you get with her ultimate, as long as your teammates do like okay, you can just look for picks with Sivir's ultimate, you can disengage with Sivir's ultimate, and in my opinion, I think it's one of the strongest abilities in the game for solo queue. She's got one of the, I want to call it the best wave clear in the game with her W and with her Q, and she's got her spell shield, which just makes her a very strong laner against strong CC supports. She's also got that auto attack reset with her W, which makes trading in the laning phase very good with Sivir. She's also got very strong poke with her Q, and her passive is also really nice for kiting. A few cons to Sivir is that she is shorter ranged, and she also is quite vulnerable when her E and her ultimate are on cooldown, so you gotta be careful when those aren't up, because you could get caught out pretty easily because she is shorter ranged. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Tristana. Tristana is like one of the strongest late game AD carries in the game. She does have like a little bit of a weaker mid game. Her early game is pretty good, and her level 6 all-in is also pretty good. And she does have like really strong self-peel with her ultimate, and she's got the mobility with her W. So I think that Tristana is a pretty safe AD carry, and if you can get to that late game with her, then you could just absolutely wreck team fights. Next up, I have Draven. So Draven, in my opinion, he's harder to play than most of the AD carries in the game because he relies on catching his axes to deal maximum damage, and if you can't focus on catching your axes in team fights, then you are going to be missing out on a lot of his damage. But I do think that a good Draven player who knows how to position correctly can definitely carry very hard. Next up, I have Graves. So Graves, I think he's a much stronger pick right now with the meta shifting away from the tank meta and more so into a squishier meta, because he's a bursty AD carry, and with his strong burst damage, he's going to be able to burst down those squishy targets. And I said burst like 3 or 4 times in that sentence, but yeah, I think that Graves is definitely coming back into the meta now, and that he is a very strong pick if the enemies are a squishier team. And last but not least, on the honorable mentions, I have Kalista. So even though Kalista did get nerfed, I think it was either patch 5.14 or patch 5.13, I still think she's a very strong pick if you know how to use her passive correctly, and you can kite with that really well. She's got like one of the strongest early games in the game because of the damage on her rend, and her level 6 all-in, if you're playing with a strong CC support, is really good as well. So if you do know how to use Kalista's passive correctly, she is definitely a very viable AD carry. And I'm not going to be doing like 6 honorable mentions anymore. I feel like that's just too much, and I'm just going to stick to doing like 3 or 4 honorable mentions for AD carry specifically, because there aren't that many AD carries in the game, obviously. So that's why I feel like doing 6 honorable mentions is just a bit too much, because you're pretty much covering like half of the AD carries in the game, so, or more than half of the AD carries in the game. So I just want to stick to lowering the amount of AD carries I have on my tier list, and that's why I'm not going to be doing 6 anymore. But that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you have not already. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.